Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Nick Whitaker with the News Lab at Google. We're here again for another week of our office hours. This week, we're doing a special office hour specifically on Google Translate. We have Ariel Koren here who's going to talk quite a bit about Google Translate, some of the new features that might be available that you might not be aware of. And we'll get into all that in just a second. But I also just wanted to remind everybody that you can always find more information about the News Lab at g.co/newslab, where we have training, tutorials, and information on a wide range of different products, including Google Translate. We also have this series of office hours every week on a wide range of different topics. We have additional office hours coming up in the next few weeks on topics like Google Maps and Google Earth, on AMP, and so on. So definitely stay tuned for that. If you're ever curious and want to find more information about where to see these office hours, or if you want to join in and add your comments or questions into the comment section or in the Q&A app, you can always find those either on our YouTube page, which you can find a link to on g.co/newslab, or also our Google Plus page, which you're probably watching this video on right now. So without any further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce Ariel Koren. She's a Associate Product Marketing Manager focusing on Google Translate. Ariel, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you work on, and what we're talking about today?
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well, or good afternoon or evening, wherever you are. My name is Ariel, and I work in marketing on Google Translate. And my goal is basically to teach as many people as possible about all of the ways that you can use the Google Translate app, and specifically the Google Translate mobile app, so that folks can get the most out of Google Translate and also overcome language barriers that they encounter in their daily lives. So today I'm going to walk through some of the coolest, in my opinion, some of the coolest features about Google Translate, and make sure, maybe we'll do a bit of an app demo, and you guys can follow along, download the app on your phone, and kind of answer any questions that you guys have, and make sure that you're really getting the most out of Google Translate.
Yeah, and I would actually recommend all of our guests that are watching today to definitely download the Google Translate app. I travel quite a bit for the work that I do, often traveling in countries and languages that I don't speak, or doing research on websites in a language that I might not speak, or if I'm trying to find, like, let's say for a restaurant or a menu or something like that. And those are just very basic consumer uses of this tool. But we'll talk a little bit about this today in terms of journalism and how you might be able to use this as a journalist, either as a research tool or just make your life easier. So there's a lot of options that we'll get into later on today on that. So Ariel, what do you have to show us today?
Great. So as we talked a little bit about, and Nick mentioned, language barriers are significant for people in their daily lives. 80% of the web is in only 10 languages, in spite of the fact that thousands are spoken around the world. And English accounts for 50% of the internet content in the world, in spite of the fact that only 20% of the world population can understand basic English. Around the globe, 3.7 billion people speak only one language. So that means that there are literally billions of people who experience language barriers regularly. It's something that's normal, that happens all the time, and yet a lot of people don't think about ways that they can kind of overcome these language barriers, and that's why we made Google Translate. We believe that language barriers don't have to hold you back, and that it is possible to get around these kind of language impediments and to communicate with people across cultures and languages. And also that translation should be more than just searching a word in a dictionary or typing a word into an app and then seeing it directly translated, but that there are all kinds of different parts of your life where you might need translation on a daily basis. So conversation mode helps you to literally have a verbal conversation with somebody. Word lens is a feature in Google Translate that allows you to just hold your camera up and translate a sign or a menu or a document. Handwriting is something that allows you to literally use your hand as if it were a pencil to write a word that you see in a script that you don't know how to type, and to translate automatically. And then offline mode is an acknowledgement of the fact that a lot of the times when you're in a situation when you need translation, you don't have Wi-Fi or you don't have data in general. And so you need to be able to translate and to communicate across languages without internet access. So as Nick said, I would highly encourage everyone to download the mobile app. So go to your app store and download Google Translate, because it'd be really helpful, I think, to follow along as I go through some of these features. So the first one is the most straightforward, typing. And I'll give everyone a moment to download the app.
And Ariel, if someone was interested in downloading the app, where would they best be able to find that if they were having trouble?
So you'll go to your app store. So the App Store in iOS, the Play Store in Android, and you'll type in Google Translate. So I'll give a little moment to download.
I got mine downloaded.
Perfect. Cool. So the first and most straightforward feature is text translation. So you'll type a word or a sentence that you need translated, and you'll select the languages that you want to translate to and from. So let's say you're typing in English and you want to translate into Hindi. You'll type the sentence and boom, it'll translate automatically. So I think that one's the most straightforward, but I'll let everyone, give everyone a moment to try it out and feel free to choose any language that you'd like and any language that you think would maybe be relevant to you. And I'll move on to the next feature, which is slightly less straightforward, conversation mode. So a lot of the communicating you do, it doesn't happen in the form of texting or emailing or typing. It's speaking. You're speaking to people. And that's why we made conversation mode for Google Translate, which is basically a two-way interpreter that you carry around with you on your phone in your pocket. So I'll walk everyone through how to use it. First off, if you've opened the app, Google Translate, you want to click on the microphone icon, and then you'll speak. Well, and by the way, first you'll choose the language that you want to translate into. So let's say you're an English speaker and you're speaking with someone who only speaks French. So you'll choose English, and then you'll select to French, and you'll press the microphone, and you'll start to speak into English. To speak in English, and then you'll press the microphone again, and it will automatically translate what you've said into French, and then the French speaker with whom you're speaking can speak into the app as well, and you can continue on to have a full conversation. So I'll show a quick demo.
And actually, while you're pulling that demo up, I had a fantastic experience actually last time I was in Paris, where I was walking around a little later in the afternoon and the evening, and I had a gentleman come up to me and actually start speaking to me in Spanish, which I neither speak French nor Spanish. And between Google Maps and Google Translate, we were able to figure out A, what he was looking for, and B, how he could actually get there. Turned out he was looking for the Eiffel Tower.
Love it.
It was like this perfect use case of Google Translate in the wild.
Wow, that's what we love to hear. Okay, so I'll show a quick demo.
Bonjour, comment puis-je vous aider?
Hello, how can I help you?
Good morning. I would like a cup of coffee.
Bonjour, je voudrais une tasse de café,
Without milk or sugar.
sans lait ni sucre.
So Ariel, tell us a little bit about what we're actually seeing here. So somebody's speaking into the app after they press the microphone recording button. They speak their English phrase into there. It plays it back for them in French. And at that point, are they then like kind of showing that to the barista to place their order?
Exactly. So that's exactly the use case. So it looks like we have someone who, is most likely American, English speaking, doesn't know French, but is traveling through France. In this case, looks like they're in a restaurant or a cafe. So the waiter comes up to him. He needs to communicate. The waiter speaks no English. So he says into the app, he pulls out Google Translate, pulls up conversation mode, and says into the app, after clicking the microphone icon, can I have some coffee? And the waiter says back in French, sure, comment je peux vous aider? et cetera. So they go on to have a conversation where they establish what the person who's dining in the restaurant wants to drink, whether he would like milk or sugar, et cetera. And so that's kind of what conversation mode is about. It's about being in a different context or speaking with someone who doesn't know your first language, but being able to navigate logistics, being able to make connections, being able to really hear each other speak. Yes.
So I could see this use case, quite a bit. If a journalist was in a region, or if they were speaking to somebody and interviewing them, and let's say, for example, that person didn't speak the same language as the person that they were interviewing, this would be a really easy tool to engage with somebody and interact with somebody despite those particular language barriers that might take place.
Definitely. And I'd love to hear from our audience about any journalist and journalism specific use cases that might come up, because I think that'd be really interesting. Cool. So I'm happy to take questions about conversation mode. And now we'll move on to another feature, which I find to be very exciting, Word Lens. So Word Lens basically allows you to just use the camera on your phone to translate signs and documents automatically.
Which is to me, just like total magic. I've seen this in action, and I've used this mostly on street signs, on like traveling through airports and different countries where I'm not able to necessarily read the street signs very well, or even like menus in restaurants. This is an incredible technology, and it's I'd say like getting close to something more like augmented reality, taking advantage of the camera on your phone and taking advantage of this word translation technology to be able to very quickly visually show you what these words might be in your native language.
Definitely. I actually have a friend who was just traveling through Taiwan, and she called me and told me that all of the instructions, because she was really prepared, she went to Taiwan with a whole list of places she wanted to visit, and she said that all of the instructions she had actually listed addresses and landmark names using English lettering. So basically pinyin or English letters to spell out these Chinese signs, etc. And when she got there, of course, it was all written in Chinese, and so she was unable to navigate, but then downloaded Google Translate and used Word Lens, and it helped her to get around, to be able to read directions and addresses and signs, museum plaques even. So she found that to be pretty helpful.
Now, I know it looks like you've got this video on the right-hand side here, which I've seen, and it's actually like a fantastic video. We'll share the link in the description of the office hour afterwards, because oftentimes it lags a little bit when you try to play it via presentation here. But I think it does a really good job of kind of demonstrating the power of Word Lens. When somebody was first explaining it to me, it didn't really sink in immediately, kind of how functional it is. But, you're really able to hold your phone up very much like it is here on the left-hand side in that milk example. Just point it at a particular object with the type of sign that you're trying to translate, and it actually shows you right on the phone the other translation. Now, I noticed that down here it says there's 29 different languages, but only some of them are from English, plus German and Arabic. Could you maybe talk a little bit about that and explain to us like how some languages are translated and why some aren't?
Well, so some are only from English. Not
right.
Only some are from English, but basically, we're continuing to develop the feature. We would love to be. We have over 100 languages that are available for text translation on the app, and we're working to get to a place where we can offer as many languages as possible in Word Lens. But of course, it's a process, and it's a recently launched feature. But yeah, we're continuing to gather as much data as we possibly can and to work to release more and more languages within the Word Lens feature.
A lot of times I get questions from journalists, and they ask me like, well, how come Google Translate doesn't translate into X language or Y language? I imagine that there's probably limitations and challenges with specific languages, translating from one type of language to another, because in some instances they're very, very different. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. As I mentioned on the first slide, when I just started talking about Google Translate, most of the world's internet content is in only a very small number of languages. So something like 80% of the internet content in the world is in only 10 languages. And the way that Google Translate works is that we pull from all of the data that we have on the World Wide Web, on the internet. So if we're trying to translate to or from a language where there's not a lot of content in that language, then we have very limited data to work with, which can have implications for the quality of the translations into and from that language, and also implications for how soon we'll be able to offer a certain feature for a given language. So the challenge is figuring out how we can gather as much data as possible. And actually, one way that we've worked to overcome this challenge, because it's really important to us that the fact that that a language is underrepresented on the internet, it's important to us that that underrepresentation is not something that manifests itself in the quality of translations that we're able to provide. So one way that we're working around that is through the Google Translate community. And the Google Translate community is basically an opportunity for users who are multilingual or who have fluency in particular languages to actually have a say in the quality of the translations that are on Translate by helping us to translate frequently asked phrases and to help us correct certain translations that might not be as accurate as can be. So it's basically a crowdsourcing effort, and it's helped us a lot in a lot of different contexts to get more information about languages that are underrepresented.
That's right. So can people participate and kind of help out, if they're, a particular language that they're speaking is an underrepresented language? How can people get involved or participate in increasing the flexibility of Google Translate?
Well, we always love for people to participate in the Google Translate community. It's extremely helpful for us. If people are in front of their computers, they can go on to Google Translate right now. And when you go onto Google Translate, give everyone a chance to do that.
And actually, since the majority of our viewers are probably going to be watching this after the fact, we can kind of scoot along here. But if you just type in Google Translate into Google search, you'll actually have a couple different options. And one of the things that I'm noticing, and I just typed in Google Translate into the search bar and actually pulled up a language block here for me, which allows me to, and actually here, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that folks can see that. But what that allows you to do is actually type directly into the search bar Google Translate, and then it pulls up these translation blocks here for you, which allows you to do some quick translations. But beyond that, then you also go to translate.google.com, and it brings you to the full Google Translate option.
Totally. And also, once you're in Google Translate, you can opt in to participate in the Google Translate community, which is actually what I wanted to share. So once you get to the community, you'll be asked to indicate which language or languages you have fluency in, and then you'll be asked to actually perform translations for us, which is hopefully fun for you, in the language that you speak natively and the language that you have either second language fluency or bilingual native fluency in, etc. And this is really helpful because, of course, when you have an app that functions on machine learning, it's always helpful to crowdsource kind of human input, because language it's about human behavior, right? So things like idioms and expressions, verb conjugations that are irregular, stuff like that. They're things that humans know best. Language is always saying that humans know best. So when we crowdsource, we're able to make it so that Google Translate can speak and translate the way that humans speak and translate on the ground.
That's great. So tell us a little bit, what other options are available within Google Translate beyond just word lens?
Yeah, cool. So I actually provided a little slide in case people want to try on their phone to use word lens on their own to see if they could translate these two words. Give a second, but I know a lot of people are probably watching after this goes live. So definitely feel free to pause here and play around with these signs. And then there's also a cool feature called the handwriting feature, And what this is about is basically the fact that a lot of scripts that you see and a lot of languages that you need translation into, they use scripts that you're not familiar with and that you definitely don't know how to type. An example in this case being Japanese. And so the point in the handwriting feature is that you can simply scribble out a word that you see, draw out what you see before your eyes, and then Google Translate will figure out what you're meaning to write, and then will help you translate.
That's really cool. So for people that have really terrible handwriting, does this actually still work pretty well?
I have pretty bad handwriting, and it works for me.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
Have you tried it, Nick?
Yeah, I was actually going to say, like, for languages that are character based versus, say, and forgive me, I'm not a linguist, so I'm not sure the exact term, but if it's more character driven, like Japanese or Chinese versus, say, English or Germanic languages that were letter based, this seems like this would be a very, very easy way to quickly get translations for languages that you might not be able to know the context of those types of characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And what's also cool is that you can also just you can use handwriting for just plain Latin letters as well. It doesn't have to be, if you're an English speaker, for example, you don't have to be looking at characters or scripts that you don't know how to type. It could also be that you're kind of in a hurry, that you feel more comfortable scribbling or drawing with your fingers than you do typing, etc. So I think there's definitely a lot of uses for the handwriting feature. And in order to access it, you actually press on the icon that looks exactly like a little scribble, as you can see over here, and just write away.
Now, is there, like, with these types of characters, is there a specific order that you have to be able to draw those? I mean, do you have to have an understanding of, like, right to left or left to right, script, or, do you need to be very specific or very precise with the way you're drawing that, or will it be able to understand, like, kind of rough approximations of what those letters might be?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do our best to quote unquote know what you mean, because obviously if you're not a speaker of the language that you're trying to translate into, you don't know exactly what the proper stroke order is, or you haven't developed any sort of formalized handwriting in the language. Of course, you're just traveling through a new place. So we do our best to know what you mean. Definitely, and that's the point of the feature, that you don't actually have to know how to write the language. Now, of course, if you're looking at a sign in Arabic, you want to write it the proper way from right to left as opposed to left to right. But hopefully that is relatively intuitive.
Gotcha.
Yes. So the next and final feature that I want to talk about is offline mode. And I think offline mode it's definitely been important for me because it allows you to use Google Translate and to access instant translations even when you're in a context or in a place where you're unable to access the internet, or even if you have a very limited to no data plan. So I think that's something that's very important, because a lot of the situations that we encounter when we are experiencing language barriers bring us to places, whether we're traveling or in a more rural area, they bring us to places where our data plan is not accessible or where we don't have Wi-Fi. So I think being able to access all of these translations offline is very important. And the way to do it is simply it happens through an instantaneous download that you can do in the language pairing that you need. So basically, when you're in the app, as you can see here, you'll go to the drop down where you choose the language that you want to translate from, and you'll press the little download button at the side of the language. And just like that, you'll have that language accessible to you and kind of instantly downloaded so that you can pull it up whenever you need, even when you don't have internet access.
That's great. So am I able to download multiple languages at the same time if I need to?
You are, yes.
And then as far as, like, the workflow for this, I would imagine, get yourself to a Wi-Fi location. If you have, like, a limited data plan, go ahead and download those options ahead of time, and then you're pretty much good to go for the rest of your trip.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually have several. I have about 7 languages downloaded, and it's helpful for me And like you said, the workflow is kind of that when I have internet access, I take the opportunity to download a language that I know I'm going to need. And then when I travel abroad, a lot of the time I don't have Wi-Fi. So, and I actually don't have an international plan on my phone. So it works out perfectly because I can just pull up Google Translate in the language that I've downloaded previously.
That's great. So, all the examples that we're talking about right here are kind of like taking advantage of the app, using real world experiences, signs, menus, other, communication with somebody externally. What if I was actually trying to translate like a text message or something that came through via an app that's already on my phone? Can Google Translate provide help in that context as well?
Yes. So actually, if you're an Android user, we have something called Tap to Translate. And that literally just allows you to tap on the email or the text message or whatever it is that you need translated into another language, and it'll instantly be translated for you. I actually didn't include this in this slide deck because I assume that a lot of folks might not be Android users, but this is something that's available on Android right now. It's
That's
called
great.
Tap to Translate. And for other, if you're using iOS, for example, you can simply copy and paste the content that you need translated into another language, and we'll translate that for you as well.
So for example, if I was in my messaging app or like WhatsApp, for example, on my Android device, and do I need to do anything in the Google Translate app to activate that Tap to Translate, or is that just if I have it downloaded on my phone, it's automatically available?
Correct.
The latter there?
Yes.
Okay. And then so once I've gone ahead and downloaded Google Translate, I've got Tap to Translate that feature available, then what's the actual, walk us through the workflow about how that would actually work?
Yeah, so I'm on an iOS right now. I'm not sure how many people are on Android, but basically, let's say you get a message in WhatsApp, right? And you don't understand, it's in a different language. So you'll literally you'll hold down the text that you need to translate, and a little Google Translate icon will just pop up.
Oh yeah, it pops up over in the right-hand corner here, almost the same way that the Facebook Messenger notifications pops up. It's like this little tiny circle, and then it pops up a menu item for me. And it's asking me, yeah, so it's asking me, well, actually, it gives me a few different options here. I can actually, there's a microphone icon here, or a speaker icon. So I imagine it plays me the sound of what I'm actually looking at.
We're breaking down.
Yep. And then it gives me the option of selecting what language I want to translate that into. And in this case, if I wanted to say, for example, pick Spanish, it gives me that. And then it gives me the option of copying it or opening it in the main app. So if I open it in the main app, it actually brings me back to Google Translate and allows me to take a look at it from there.
Exactly. And then, of course, if you don't have Android, Tap to Translate isn't yet available on iOS. But you can, similarly to how you just mentioned, you can easily copy and paste the content that you get and then move back into the Translate app. But the reason that we brought Tap to Translate to Android is because we realized that for a lot of people, switching in and out of different applications on your phone is a bit of a hassle. So being able to simply translate right on the spot without leaving the app you're in is something we felt important.
That's very interesting. So, there's a few other options here, which I'm noticing as well. One of them is called Phrasebook. What is Phrasebook all about? And is that available on iOS as well as Android?
It is. So Phrasebook is basically just a personal book that, and you can access it if you log in, where you can add phrases that you think are helpful or that you like or that you want to revisit into your own personal repertoire. And that's really helpful for me as someone who loves learning languages. It's helpful to kind of have a compilation of all of the languages that I'm learning and all of the phrases within those languages that are new to me, that I find to be interesting or that I want to remember.
So that could actually be used for a couple different use cases, I would imagine. Like, so again, if you're a journalist and you're out in the field, you're going to be using very similar phrases probably over and over again, especially if you're talking about a particular issue or an event that's occurring. In this case, with this particular phrase book, what I might want to do is pre-translate a handful of different phrases, drop them in there so that I could very easily reference them later. Is that kind of the understanding of how that feature works?
Oh, exactly.
And could you tell us a little bit more about, possibly other uses for phrasebook, or how that might interact with like other apps or other use cases?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, what I use phrasebook for is actually language learning, which I think a lot of people just use translate to instantaneously translate things and to be able to move through an environment where the language that they speak natively is not spoken. For me, it's helpful because I love actually studying languages. So I make my own phrasebook of all of the different words and phrases that I've never heard before and that I'd like to revisit. And so I actually use it to quiz myself a lot of the time. I know people who, like you just mentioned, they're traveling in a new place and there's like one sentence, let's say, or 3 or 4 sentences that they continue to forget, but they need consistently. So they'll actually add those sentences to their phrasebook and then no longer have this constant struggle of needing to look it up, which is just a total hassle, especially if you have to deal with one sentence that you keep forgetting over and over again. So for example, where's the bathroom might be a simple one. In a journalist context, maybe it's politely asking someone for an interview, or if you can take a picture of something or someone. If you're speaking a language that's really different from your own, it might be hard for you to actually memorize the sounds and be able to pull it off the top of your head. But when you add all of these phrases that are important and kind of staple, like communication staples, into your phrasebook, you're able to pull these phrases up instantly and have them kind of in your toolbox.
That's super, super handy. And actually, I think for all journalists, where to find the bathroom is always a really important question, no matter where you're at. So I actually just got Lin Rao just commented, and he commented in a language that I don't speak. So I copied that, dropped that into Google Translate, and was able to translate that to say,
wow, love it.
Hello there. So hello there, Lin Rao. Thank you for participating in our office hour today. If you guys have any questions or comments you want to drop into the comment or the Q&A section below, we'd definitely love to hear from you, even if it's just to say hello like he did. So I see a couple other options here also within Android. And this might be different for iOS as well. One of those is this feature called SMS translation. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
So that allows you to translate your text messages.
And how does that actually work? Do I have to click and drop that into my SMS, or is it interface with my messaging app automatically somehow?
And where are you seeing that right now? Are you on your Android?
Yeah, let me actually see if I can project here. Hold on one second. And Ariel, while I'm pulling that up, where can folks find additional information about Google Translate, or find additional tutorials or tips about how to use this?
Yeah, so if you Google Translate or Google Translate About, you can find our About page, which will allow you to access information about Google Translate and kind of the different features. And we're actually rolling out some more education programs soon.
Very cool. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to present from my phone as I thought I would be able to. So, well, actually, no. Yeah, no. There's no easy way I'll be able to do that. I'll take a few screenshots and hopefully you'll be able to add those in afterwards. But on this particular app, if you're on Android, again, this might be different if you're on iOS, but when I click the little hamburger icon on the top left-hand corner, which is that drop-down menu, I call it the hamburger icon. It's phrasebook, and then SMS translation is the next feature there. So if I click on SMS translation, it brings me to a selection of SMSs that I imagine I've had in the past. I don't use my SMS app a ton, so usually it's just Google verification codes and Waze verification codes and other things like that. But if I clicked on one of those, I guess that's pulling that directly from my messaging app. So any messages that came through, I imagine I have to give access to that, but any messages that came through my Messenger app will then show up within Google Translate in that SMS translate. And then it gives me the ability, as if it was something I typed in manually, to select that, choose the language that I want, and then it gives me that translation down below. Now, I did notice one thing, and actually let me select one that's a little less.
Yeah, and the benefit of this is it's similar to Tap to Translate, which we just talked about, which is that a lot of the time you're receiving content that's actually on your own phone, but it's kind of a hassle to sift through all of that content that you need to translate when it's in a different language. So it's about kind of making that content accessible and centralized and all in one place so that you can easily translate.
Got it. So this one might be a little bit difficult to see for viewers because I'm going to just show you my phone because that's what I have available to me right now. In this case, I've got a message that came in via SMS. I've got the translation that I pulled up here for me. In this case, I chose Spanish to get that translation. And it gives me a few other options here. But one of those options that it provides me is the ability to star one of these. When I star that, what is that actually doing?
So that'll add the translation to your phrasebook.
That's great. So then that's all I have to do. So if I want to come back to this message later on, I can then find that in my phrase book by going up to that hamburger icon I was talking about a minute ago, going to my phrase book, and there it is. There's that message.
Great.
So definitely, where's the bathroom? How much for a beer?
All the important things for journalists.
All
right?
the important things. How do I find a top-up card for my SIM card? Those types of things. We were mentioning earlier offline translation for those of you who, man, I need to get a manicure. For those of you who might be interested in offline translation that we were talking about there, and then there's help and feedback. And I always tell journalists this, and very rarely do they ever listen to me. Read the help menus. These are super helpful. And when you have a little bit of downtime, this will actually take you through a lot of the tips and tricks and how to take advantage of this particular app. One other thing that I noticed though too, there's some really easy features here that are built into the translation. One of those just being able to copy and paste that. So, so if I wanted to take that and I wanted to drop that into an email, for example, or if I wanted to drop that into another app, is that the easiest workflow to take a phrase from Google Translate and drop that into another app, or are there other ways to go about doing that that would maybe be a little bit more seamless?
For me, it certainly is. I think if you're on Android, Tap to Translate is great because that eliminates all hassle. You don't have to even leave the app you're in. In the event that you're not, I think that that just being able to instantly press a button and automatically copy the content that you're hoping to send to someone else or to plug into a different app is pretty seamless, pretty instant, and it's definitely the workflow that I use when I'm using Translate.
Gotcha. Now I noticed one other thing here too. So like one of the other features that's available is start conversation. What is start conversation? Let's talk about that a little bit, because this is the one that I actually took advantage of when I was in Paris, and I had that really interesting interaction with the gentleman that came up and started speaking to me in Spanish.
So when you were in Paris, was this person speaking to you in Spanish and you were speaking back to the person in French?
Well, I wasn't speaking to him in French, but I was copying and pasting, and like we were both. It's funny because like we're in the middle of like this traffic circle basically, and I'm walking around, and I mean, first of all, I was really flattered that he came up to me and assumed that I was able to speak Spanish, even though my language skills are very poor. And then so we popped into conversation mode, and we're able to have like an interchange between one another using the actual phone. So neither one of us were really speaking. We were laughing a lot, actually kind of like pointing at the app and typing things in. I would hand him my phone. He would type in a phrase. It would speak it back to us. And then I would understand that and then speak, type my reply back to him. And he was looking for the Eiffel Tower. So we were able to like get him to where he needed to go, mostly through Google Translate, and then flipped over to Google Maps after that. So as far as like conversation mode goes, how does that differ than other features or other modes within Google Translate?
Yeah, so conversation mode, it's different because it's verbal and it's happening live, and it's it's an interaction that's happening right there on the spot with another person. So word lens is something that you're more likely to maybe be doing on your own when you're traveling, you're reading a document, you're reading a menu. It's kind of an individual process. Same with text translation. But when you're using conversation mode, you're presumably speaking with you're in either a group or you're speaking to one other person. And what's cool about it is that you can actually speak in the language that you know, and the person you're speaking with can speak back in their own language. So it allows you to actually have a real engaged and dynamic conversation, in spite of the fact that the two of you do not speak the same mother tongue.
That's pretty amazing. One of the other features that I noticed too, like, so, this is the typical interface that we're looking at here. If I turn my phone sideways, and I think there's a glare on the screen, so it might actually not show it. Yeah, unfortunately, well, what it's actually showing me, it's the polarization on my phone. Maybe it actually does it the other
There we
direction.
go.
There we go. So basically what this does is it shows you in full screen what that particular phrase is. So I can go through here, and instead of having to both crouch over a tiny, tiny device and being able to translate back and forth, I can actually blow this up full screen and interact that way. So
yeah, and I actually know some people who, when they're traveling, they prefer to show the person that they're trying to communicate with the words as opposed to actually speaking, just because they're shy or whatever it is. And so when you can kind of enlarge those words, it makes it a lot easier. You don't have to have people all crouching over one phone.
Definitely. And I've used this multiple times. I mean, the use cases for me is usually based around travel. So oftentimes it's with customs, it's at an airport, it's getting into the taxi cab, trying to find where the hotel is.
Yeah.
It's, if I'm interviewing somebody or talking to somebody that, it's usually on my end where my translation or my use of that particular language and the pronunciation of that language, like I would be butchering it if I were to actually try to do that. So to avoid insulting those people, I usually just kind of show them the screen. And I actually think it's like this really interesting human dynamic that happens, because people I think intuitively understand. They're like, oh, this is a translation app, and there's like this kind of wow factor that ends up happening. Usually there's a lot of giggling. There's a lot of kind of poking around to try to figure out how to make it work. But I think as a journalist, one thing that I would recommend is really get comfortable with that conversation mode. Because in most cases, that's probably the use case that you're going to be taking advantage of. It's like you're interacting with somebody on the street. It's on the fly. It's this very kind of open and kind of free-flowing experience. Sandra Gonzalez just chimed in and she says, is that on the iPhone as well? So, I guess one of the questions that I might have is, what are the big differences between iOS and Android as far as the Google Translate app? Are there specific features that are only available on one versus the other? I know we mentioned before, what was it, the SMS translation or the click to translate. Are there other features that are only available on Android versus iOS?
So all of the features that I just ran through, the basic key features of the mobile app, are available on both iOS and Android. I've obviously used Google Translate on both. I think that the experience is almost the same. The key difference would be, as you just mentioned, the tap to translate feature. So this ability to not move from app to app, but rather to simply access Translate immediately when you're in WhatsApp or when you're in SMS, Facebook Messenger, etc. I think would be the key difference. But otherwise, the workflow is very similar.
Got it. Now, so we talked a lot about mobile, and we've been really kind of focusing around the mobile app. And I think the majority of the use cases that people are going to be coming across, at least in their day-to-day job, will most likely be via the app. We were also talking just briefly about Google Translate within search, and also Google Translate, the web-based app as well. What are some of are there big differences between the app, the mobile app, and the desktop version of Google Translate that people should be aware of? And, maybe tied to that, what would be, the use case for using Google Translate within your browser versus using it on the app?
Totally. So I think for very obvious reasons, Word Lens is only available on your phone. Same with conversation mode and handwriting, because it's a lot easier, of course, to use your phone you're walking around. You're not going to be walking around with your computer having a conversation in a restaurant, whereas it's very likely that you'd be doing that with your phone. For me personally, when I use Google Translate on desktop or in search, is when I'm already doing work, writing emails. So I'm already kind of on my computer, and there's something that I'm wanting to say in a different language. So I'm already there, I'm on desktop, and it works. I like having kind of that big view of everything that I'm translating. One of my favorite things about Google Translate and search, and you can actually search for this on your phone as well as on your desktop. One of the things that I love is that you can literally just type in to Google search and to your browser, how do you say banana in Portuguese, and a one box will pop up. And you pointed this out a little bit earlier, but a one box will pop up. So you don't even need to click anywhere. You'll just see instantly Google Translate installs a one box at the top of your search results, which will tell you how to say banana in Portuguese or whatever it is that you're searching. So I think that is unbelievably convenient, and probably one of the most helpful use cases.
Yeah, and I use that constantly. I speak with people all the way around the world on a regular basis. And, one of the things that I really like to do, and this is just a personal thing that I like to do, is in my salutations at the end of my email, I try to pick, some common phrase or some kind of common salutation as I'm, closing out my email in that person's native tongue. I wouldn't be able to do that. There's a handful of different languages that I at least know how to say hello and goodbye and thank you and those types of things. But I think it's like a nice little, added treat. It's kind of just a nod of respect to somebody that speaks another tongue, that like I'm trying, right? Like trying to meet
Totally.
you part of the way there.
Totally.
There's another feature that I realized, or I found a couple weeks ago. There's extensions that you can actually download as well, isn't there? For Google Translate, like let's say if you're on Google Chrome, there's a Google Translate extension that you can download. It actually pops up this little icon on the top, within your extension bar there.
You want to do a screen share?
Yeah, let me see if I can actually screen share this. Here we go. So this was actually just the translation of the quick question that we got earlier, the comment where the gentleman was saying, hello there. You should be able, actually, let me see. Can you see? I don't know if you can see in the top right-hand corner. I think it might actually be blocked by, oh, that's a bummer. Hold on, let me see if I can adjust this. Well, for some reason, I can't actually show my, let me change the way I'm screen sharing. I'll just share my whole screen. That should allow me to see it. There we go. Entire screen. You should be able to see yourself. And then you should be able to see that screen now.
Mm-hmm.
And then this little icon right here, Google Translate. And what it actually then allows me to do is I can right click on this and I can actually go to Google Translate, and it gives me these additional options to translate a particular page. So if I wanted to translate an entire page of text that was possibly in another language, I can do that. And then it gives me the ability to go in and change some of these extension options. So it's just like a really easy way to kind of pop in without having to copy paste stuff, without having to like have a separate tab open just for Google Translate. It just gives me another like really quick way to jump in there. So if you are a Chrome extension user like I am, I'm always looking for like little shortcuts to get me in or out of a particular feature a little bit more easily. That'd be definitely something to check out. I haven't checked it out for Safari yet to see if there's just extensions or additional features available there as well, but it'd be definitely worth checking out. Ariel, do you have any other tips or tricks or other fun anecdotes you'd like to offer to the audience here about using Google Translate, or some use cases you may have heard from the field, like in your travels, of people using Google Translate for amazing things?
Yeah, every friend I have who travels and every coworker I have who travels comes back with really fun stories. I think the most exciting part about working on Translate is just seeing the way that connections really are able to form as a result of the Google Translate app, and particularly the mobile app, because it allows you to be on the go and not feel held back and limited by language barriers. I actually have a great friend who just moved here from China, so moved actually to California, and is now driving Uber. And he's doing it as a way to meet people because, he's just moved here. He's looking to make as many friends as possible, but he's still learning English. And so he actually told me that he started about a month ago to use the Google Translate mobile app with some of his passengers in the car. And he says as a result, his ability to connect with people is a lot deeper and more intense. And actually, for people who have taken an Uber before, you have the option to give a certain number of stars to the driver, and the driver can give a certain number of stars to the passenger as well. So you kind of rate each other. And he said that he has a perfect rating ever since using Google Translate, because people really feel that he's making a connection. And I think maybe a bit of that was missing before. So he and his story is definitely one of the most inspiring and cool use cases I've heard. I think on a larger scale, there's a lot of inspiring work that's happening in schools right now, in Europe and the United States and Canada because of the Syrian refugee crisis that's kind of ongoing. And so having kids come into schools when a lot of them only speak Arabic and they're trying to learn European languages or English or whatever it is, seeing teachers actually make an effort to use Google Translate in classrooms to help kids be able to communicate with their peers and be able to engage with their classwork. That's been something that's been very inspiring and rewarding for me to be able to see as well.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the key, right? It's like language is one of these universal kind of barriers. Like there's so many different languages, there's so many different ways of interacting, and like that immediate understanding, like once you're able to connect with somebody through language, even if it's mediated through a technology, I think that those barriers become much less cumbersome, and it makes it much easier to be able to connect with somebody, and especially within the context of a journalist. Especially, you know, when you're interviewing somebody or trying to get their story, trying to get information from them to help tell their story, being able to interface with them in their native tongue versus, say, you know, translated through a third party, or you know whatever limited amount of language skills you might already be coming to the scene with. I think you just get much stronger stories and much stronger interactions out of those, or at the very least, understand where to find the bathroom, or you know how to get to your particular hotel where you're trying to get to. So, you know, we mentioned some references, some tutorials and trainings that we're putting together. You know, where would people be able to find those, and you know, where should people go first once they've downloaded the app, once they've started playing around with it a little bit? Where would you recommend that they then check out to find more out about Google Translate?
Totally, yeah. So there are a few resources that I would recommend checking out. First, check out the Google Translate About page, because you'll find all kinds of helpful information there. And as we continue to upload more training material and videos, you'll be able to find it on our Google Translate About page. You can literally just Google Translate About. If you go to Google's official YouTube channel, there's actually an entire playlist that is just dedicated to videos about Google Translate. So there you'll be able to find videos about different Google Translate features. You'll be able to find some of the cool stories and use cases that can maybe inspire you on ways that you can use Google Translate in your own life and to make a difference for people around you who are linguistically diverse. So YouTube, the Google Translate About page, Google Translate, you know, there's some inspiring stories that come up in the news. So I think just doing a Google search. I read an article that came out last week about an entire bus system in New Hampshire that's using Google Translate because so many linguistically diverse passengers are coming onto the bus and having trouble communicating with the drivers and with the passengers around them. So that was a story that I came across recently. And then there's also a Google Translate blog. If you're on Google Plus now, you could totally follow the Google Translate Google Plus page as well, where we post some updates. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and definitely stay tuned on the g.co/newslab site. In the future, we're going to have additional lessons on Google Translate. We have a few up there that we've used, for example, around the topic of verification and fact checking. So, you know, as you're working as a journalist, you know, there's a lot of opportunities to be able to use Google Translate as a tool to verify, did that photo take place in that location, in that during that period of time, as a particular person who shared that feature or that photo may have stated. And there's a lot of really innovative work by folks like Elliot Higgins from Bellingcat and others that are using tools like Google Translate in conjunction with Google Earth and Google Maps, Street View in Google Maps, or even reverse image search to find particular images, icons, or words within those images, and then be able to figure out, like, actually that photo didn't take place in the Ukraine. It took place somewhere completely different at a completely other location. So there's a lot of various different use cases for this. You know, what we're very much interested in is hearing from journalists who are using Google Translate and all of the various tools that we talk about on these office hours. Send us in your comments and questions, your anecdotes, your stories. Screenshots are always super helpful. We want to hear from you. You can reach out to us us at newslabsupport@google.com if you have additional questions about this or any of our office hours that we do. And as always, stay in touch. We'll be doing another office hour next week on Google Maps, and then continuing on for many, many weeks after that in addition. Also, for those of you who were not able to tune in yesterday, we did this really great data visualization roundup with Alberto Cairo. This is a new effort that we're working on with our office hours, doing special focused topics, in this case around data journalism. Alberto Cairo and I went through a whole range of different data visualizations around elections. So if you're interested in learning more about that or anything else, reach out to us, newslabsupport@google.com, g.co/newslab. Ariel, where do people find out about Google Translate?
Google Translate About.
Very good. And also download it on iOS and Android.
And definitely send us your stories. We love to hear people's Google Translate stories and feature some of them as well. So definitely send those in, like Nick said.
Sounds good. Ariel, thank you so much for taking some time to walk us through Google
Of course.
Translate.
Thank you, guys. Muchísimas gracias a todo el mundo. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll talk soon.
Awesome.
Bye, everybody.